Stop for a moment. Take one real breath. I mean that literally. Breathe in, hold it, and release, because what you are about to hear requires your full presence. Chosen one, I want to ask you something honest. When you imagine the version of your life that you know is possible, the one that makes something in your chest shift every time you think about it, how far does it feel? If you are like most people walking this path, it feels like years, like mountains, like you need something you do not yet have before you can begin. But I need to tell you something that the patterns of thousands of lives have confirmed over and over again. You are not years away. You are not mountains away. You are one decision away, not one more breakthrough, not one more season of waiting. One decision, the right kind of decision, stands between you and a life that the people closest to you will not be able to explain. And the truth about that decision is not what you think it is. I am. I'm going to show you exactly what it is today, where it lives, why it has been so hard to cross, and what happens to your relationships, your clarity, your resources, your confidence, the moment you make it. The life is already built. The favor is already in motion. Everything that was spoken over you is already positioned and waiting. You just need to decide. Stay with me. This is where it changes. Now, before we go any deeper, I want to tell you what you are going to walk away with by the time this video is done. Because I do not want you to leave early and miss the piece that could change everything for you this season. By the end of this, you are going to know exactly what the real decision is, and I promise you, it is not what you think. You are going to understand why that decision has been so difficult to make, and why that difficulty is actually evidence that you are ready. You are going to receive a specific 3-question framework that you can run any decision through right now, today. And I am going to share something about how your brain works at its highest level, something that the research has confirmed, and that changes how you approach every threshold from this point forward. Stay until the end. What is coming is worth every minute. Now, let me ask you something. Think about where you were 1 year ago, 2 years ago. Now look at where you are today. And if you are being completely honest with yourself, is it different enough? Not perfect, not ideal, just different enough? Because there is a specific kind of pain that belongs to people like you, not the pain of failure, not the pain of total loss, the pain of almost. The pain of seeing your own potential so clearly, feeling it in your body, knowing it in your bones, and not being able to close the distance between who you are now and who you know you are supposed to be. You have been close enough to taste it. You have been close enough to see it clearly. You have been close enough to believe it without needing proof. And then you watched it stay just beyond reach, season after season. And you are tired, not just physically, tired in a way that sleep does not fix, tired in a way that has more to do with the weight of what you have been carrying in silence than with anything you have been doing wrong. I want to tell you what that is. And I want to start by naming something that most people are treating like a problem, but is actually the most significant sign you could receive right now. You have been feeling restless, not quite anxious, not quite depressed, but a low, constant hum of not quite right that follows you from room to room, from 1 week into the next. Like something is about to happen and you cannot figure out what it is. That is not a problem. That is proximity. Your spirit knows when you are standing close to something real. And right now, whether the evidence supports it or not, you are standing at a threshold. And I want to show you 5 things that confirm it. The first thing is that unexplained exhaustion. Not the kind that comes from sickness or too much work, the kind that lives in your bones, the kind where you sleep and wake up, and the tired is still there waiting for you. Most people call this burnout, but here is what it actually is. Your whole system is processing a level of weight that your old self never had to carry. And the gap between who you used to be and who you are becoming requires energy that your body has not yet learned to produce consistently. The exhaustion you feel is not your body giving out. It is your body catching up. The second thing is that your old environments have started to feel suffocating, places that used to feel like home, conversations that used to feel comfortable. Something has shifted, quietly and without your permission, and the spaces that once fit you no longer do. You have not made any announcements. You have not had any dramatic confrontations. But something inside you has outgrown the container it was in. That is not ingratitude. That is not pride. That is the proof that you have been growing, even in the silence, even when you could not see it happening. The third thing is the dreams. If you have been having more vivid dreams than usual, dreams that feel sharper than real life, dreams where you are searching for something or arriving somewhere that you somehow already know, do not dismiss them. The spirit speaks in symbols when the thinking mind is too loud to listen. Your deeper self is rehearsing something. Pay attention. The fourth thing is that your tolerance has changed. Things that used to slide past you now catch. Conversations that felt fine a year ago now drain you almost immediately. Drama that you once absorbed without thinking now feels like something you physically cannot afford. That is not you becoming difficult. That is discernment rising. Your energy is being protected because there is something ahead that is going to need all of it. And the fifth thing, the one that I think matters most, is that pull. That quiet, persistent pull towards something you cannot completely name yet, not toward a specific outcome, toward a version of yourself, toward a way of moving through the world that feels more like the truth of who you are than anything you are currently living. This is not wishful thinking. This is not longing dressed up as spirituality. This is alignment beginning to find you. And I hear something being spoken over this moment right now, for everyone who has been carrying this season longer than they ever expected to. You have not been forgotten. What looked like silence was not absence. Every day you chose to hold on. Every morning you decided to keep believing when the evidence was thin. That was seen. Every single day. You were not being abandoned in the waiting. You were being shaped. And what was being shaped in you is now ready for what is coming. Now I want to show you something that reframes everything about where you are. Your life has been recalculating. Like a GPS that adjusted the route without changing the destination. The destination has never been in question, only the path. And the recalculating is almost done. But here is what most people miss. And it is the thing I need to show you right now, because it is the difference between circling the threshold for another year and actually crossing it. Most people in your position believe the same thing. They believe the decision they are waiting to make is about something they need to do. Call someone, leave something, launch something, start something, and those things are real. They will come. But they are not the decision. Let me show you what I mean. Think about Joseph. Not as a familiar story, as a real human being who spent years in a pit and then in a prison, watching the gap between who he knew he was and the life he was actually living grow wider every single day. Most people assume the turning point in his story was the day Pharaoh called him out of prison, but that was not the hinge. The hinge was earlier, quieter. It happened inside. It was the moment Joseph decided that he was not a slave, even while enslaved, that he was not forgotten, even while abandoned, that he was not defined by where he was, but by who he had been made to be. That internal decision, made in total obscurity, with no evidence that anything was about to change, that is what unlocked everything. The favor of Pharaoh was not new on that day. The positioning was not new. Joseph was new. Because the decision had already been made, in secret, where no one could see it. Revelation 1 is this: the decision you are one step away from is not an action. It is a mindset threshold. It is the shift from, I hope this happens for me someday, to, I was built for this, and I choose to live like it now. I know what comes up when you hear that. I know the voice that rises and says, "That sounds like arrogance. That sounds like claiming something I have not yet earned." So let me make a distinction that matters. There is a difference between entitlement and alignment. Entitlement says, "I deserve this because of who I am." Alignment says, "I was designed for this, and I am choosing to accept it now rather than waiting until I feel worthy enough." One is pride. The other is actually a form of humility, because it takes real humility to accept that you were chosen before you felt like it. It takes courage to stop making your worthiness conditional. That is Revelation 1. The decision is a mindset threshold. But here is where most chosen ones stop. They accept the mindset shift. They feel the energy of it for a few days. They believe differently, move differently, even speak differently. And then, slowly, without knowing exactly how, things slide back. The clarity fades, the decision erodes, and they end up circling the same place again. Why? Because there is a deeper decision underneath the first one. And it is the one that everything has been waiting for. The one that the mindset shift alone cannot carry you all the way to. I am going to show you what that decision is. But first, I need to show you what has been quietly blocking it, because most people have been misreading it as weakness. And it is actually one of the most important things happening inside you right now. Stay with me, because this next part matters. The wilderness you have been in, the long season, the waiting, the years of formation you could not always see the purpose of, it did something to you that no classroom or shortcut could have done. It stripped things. The first thing it stripped was the need for validation. Before you move, the older version of you needed someone to see your potential before you could act on it. Needed confirmation, encouragement, permission from the outside. That person is gone. The wilderness replaced that need with something much sturdier, an internal knowing that does not require an audience. The second thing it stripped was the belief that readiness is a feeling. Most people are waiting to feel ready before they move. But readiness is not a feeling, it is a decision. The wilderness taught you this the hard way, by repeatedly putting you in situations where you had to act without the feeling of readiness, and then discovering that you could. That lesson is in your bones now, even if your mind has not fully accepted it yet. And the third thing it stripped was the identity of the one who almost made it. That story, the narrative that says you are someone who gets close but never quite arrives, that is not your history. That is a shell the wilderness was burning away. And what emerges from that kind of fire is not almost, it is the real thing. But here is where I need to be honest with you about something. Because there is a reason the deeper decision has been hard to make. And it is not the reason most people assume. It is not fear of failure, it is fear of success. More specifically, it is the fear of becoming someone you do not yet fully recognize. What if I actually get there? What if I build the thing, and it changes me into someone I don't know? What if everyone really sees me, and finds out I was never supposed to be here? What if I receive the breakthrough and crack under the weight of it? I am not going to tell you to push past that fear or pretend it is not there. I am going to tell you what it actually means. The people who have crashed at the height of success had no fear because they had no awareness of the weight. They climbed without understanding what they were carrying. You have fear because you understand the magnitude, because something in you knows this is not small, and it refuses to treat it like it is. Your fear is not a stop sign, it is a scale. It is telling you the weight of what you are stepping into, and confirming that you are strong enough to know the difference between carrying something and being crushed by it. That is not weakness. That is not a reason to wait. That is the mark of someone who was built for responsibility. And because of that, I want to give you something that most people never give you. Permission. You are allowed to be afraid and move forward. Anyway, you are allowed to outgrow people who were part of an older version of your story. You are allowed to protect what is being built inside you, Even when the people around you do not understand why you have grown quieter, you are allowed to set limits without drafting a full explanation. You are allowed to take up the space that was always yours. You are allowed to stop apologizing for becoming the person you were always intended to be. And you do not owe anyone a detailed accounting for walking through a door that was built specifically for you. The recalculating is almost done. The destination has never changed. But the real decision, the one underneath the mindset, underneath the fear, underneath everything we have walked through so far, that is coming in part 2. And when it lands, you are going to understand something about your life right now that reframes everything that came before it. Every delay, every closed door, every season of waiting, all of it is going to make sense in a new way. Stay with me. Part 2 is where it all comes together. Welcome to part 2. If you stayed, something in you knew to stay. Not because this video asked you to, because something inside you recognized that what is being said here is not general, it is specific. And it is for you. In part 1, I showed you 5 signs that confirm you are standing at a threshold right now, not approaching it, it. I showed you the first revelation, that the decision is not an action but a mindset threshold. And I showed you the fear that has been quietly sitting underneath the deeper decision, and what that fear actually means about you. Now it is time for the decision itself. Let me take you back to the GPS. Your life has been recalculating. The route shifted, adjusted, rerouted, but the destination never moved. And Revelation 1 said this: stop waiting to feel ready. Accept that you were built for this. Choose the mindset now. That is true, and it matters. But I told you there was something underneath it. Here is Revelation 2. The mindset shift is not enough on its own, because a mindset shift is still future-facing, still about who you will become, still conditional in some quiet, hard-to-name way. Still, I am moving toward being this person, or I will be ready when. Revelation 2 is this: the decision is not about who you will become. It is about accepting, in this moment, today, as you are, that you already are that person. Not eventually. Not after the next season of preparation. Not after the circumstances line up. Now. You already are the person that life is waiting for. I know how that lands differently depending on where you are. I know some of you are sitting with circumstances that make that sentence feel impossible. The finances are not where they should be. The path is still unclear in certain places. The relationships around you are still complicated. And yet, hear this: Joseph in the pit. Not Joseph in the palace. Not Joseph advising Pharaoh. Joseph in the pit. Covered in the darkness of a place he did not deserve, watching years pass without a single sign that anything was about to change. And he was already the leader. He was already the deliverer. He was already the one who would save his family and shift the trajectory of a generation. The pit did not change that. The prison did not subtract from it. The only thing that changed, the only hinge moment, was when Joseph chose to let his identity be the most true thing about him, regardless of the evidence his circumstances were providing. The palace was not built the day Pharaoh called him out. It was built the day Joseph accepted who he was from inside the pit. And I hear something being spoken over this moment right now, clearly and without reservation. For everyone watching who has been waiting for the conditions to change before they accept who they are. The decision I am calling you toward is not an action you need to take. It is an acceptance you need to make. I have already moved on your behalf. I have already positioned the relationships that belong to your next chapter. The doors that were meant for you are already unlocked. The resources that are connected to your calling are already in motion. The only thing that has not yet moved is you deciding that you are the one all of it was moved for. Stop waiting to deserve it. You were chosen before you felt like it. And the life that has been assembled for you cannot fully release until you accept the one it was built for. That is the decision. Now, let me show you what happens when it is made. What felt like isolation was actually incubation. What felt like delay was actually very precise development. What felt like silence was actually strategy, the kind of silence that happens before something that cannot be undone. Every season you walked through, every door that closed in your face, every prayer that seemed to disappear into the ceiling, it was assembling. Piece by piece, in the unseen world, it was building the exact life that is now one decision away. It is positioned. It is prepared. It has your name on it. The recalculating is done. The route is clear. The destination has never changed. And the only question that remains is whether you will decide to drive. Now I want to give you a tool. Because your spirit may already know this decision is real, but your mind needs something to work with. I call this the threshold test. It is 3 questions. You can do this right now wherever you are without moving at all. Just hold each question and notice what happens in your body when you do. The first question: am I saying no to this because it is not right, or because I am afraid it might be? Not afraid it will not work. Afraid it will. That is the fear we talked about, the fear of actually arriving, of becoming someone you do not yet recognize. Sit with that question for a moment. Notice the difference in how those 2 answers feel inside you. One feels like wisdom. The other feels like hiding. The second question: would the person I am becoming make this decision, or only the person I was? Not the version of you from 2 years ago who needed external confirmation before taking a step. The version of you that the wilderness has been building, the one who no longer needs an audience to move. Would that person make this call? And the third question: if I knew the outcome was already secured, if I knew I could not fail, what would I decide right now? The answer that comes up before you can talk yourself out of it, the one that arrives before your logic can complicate it, that is your real answer. That is the one your spirit has known for longer than you realize. Run every major threshold in your life through those 3 questions, not to eliminate the uncertainty, but to separate wisdom from fear. The threshold test does not give you certainty, it gives you clarity. And clarity is what decision-making actually requires. Now I want to shift for a moment, because there is something happening in your brain during this kind of clarity that science has a name for. And understanding it is going to change how you approach every decision from this point forward. Neuroscientists who study the moments when people make genuinely life-changing decisions, not decisions made out of desperation or panic, but decisions made from real alignment and knowing, have found something consistent. In those moments, the brain is operating at what is called gamma frequency, 40 hertz and above. This is the state of peak integration, where different regions of the brain are communicating with each other at the highest possible speed. This is where insight lives, where that feeling of "I just know" comes from, where the answer arrives whole and complete before the logic has had a chance to process it. Here is the remarkable thing. Every child is born living in that state. Scientists have measured it. Children under 7 operate almost entirely in gamma. Learning is effortless. Pattern recognition is extraordinary. The connection between knowing something and acting on it is immediate, almost automatic. Everything feels possible because at a neurological level, the brain has not yet been taught to distrust itself. And then, around age 7, something begins to happen. Dr. Robert Lake, a neuroscientist with 34 years of research, calls it the decline effect. The modern world, the education system, the constant noise, the relentless pressure to perform and compare, begins training the brain out of gamma and into beta. The frequency of survival. The frequency of, "Am I good enough?" The frequency of waiting for external permission before moving forward. Most adults spend the majority of their lives entirely in that beta state, not because they are broken, because they were trained, because the world benefited from a brain that doubts itself. And this is why the decision that is one step away from you can feel simultaneously clear and impossible. Why the knowing arrives in glimpses and then disappears. Why you can feel the truth of who you are in the morning and lose it again by the evening. Your receiver has been tuned to the wrong frequency. The signal is real, the static is what is getting in the way. Now, what if there was a way to call your brain back to gamma? Not through years of practice, not through expensive equipment, not through anything that requires you to restructure your entire life before you begin. Dr. Lake spent decades on this question, drawing on research from MIT, Harvard, Stanford, and Princeton. He developed a 7-minute audio track that uses a process called brain entrainment. The same principle behind how certain rhythms and frequencies naturally synchronize with brainwave patterns. To bring your mind back to gamma state, you put on headphones, you sit or lie down, you listen for 7 minutes. He calls it the genius song. And what I want to be clear about is this is not a replacement for faith. It is not a substitute for the inner work. It is a recalibration. A way of clearing the interference so that the clarity that is already yours, the knowing that is already inside you, can actually land and stay. Over 18,000 people have used it. Not because they were desperate, but because they were serious about removing what was getting between them and the level of decision-making that changes lives. Think of it this way. Your mind is like a radio that has been on a static channel for years. You can hear something through the noise, a signal, a direction, a calling, but it keeps breaking up. The genius song is the adjustment that clears the static, not by adding something new, by restoring the frequency that was always yours. If that resonates with you, if something in you says yes to the idea of clearing the interference, all the information is in the pinned comment below this video. Take a look when you are ready. I believe for many of you, this is not a coincidence that you are hearing about this today. Now, before I close, I want to give you a moment. Right now, wherever you are. In your mind, I want you to imagine a door. Not a grand door, an ordinary one, the kind you would walk past without a second look. But behind it, you can hear something, not loudly, just underneath everything, like a sound that has always been there, and you are only now still enough to notice. Movement, life. The sound of everything that was promised over you, existing, breathing, arranged and ready. Imagine your hand on the handle. Notice what happens in your body right now. Notice whether you feel the pull to turn it or the fear of what turning it might mean. Both of those feelings are telling you the same thing. You have arrived. You are at the door. This is not somewhere down the road. You are standing here right now. You do not need to see what is behind it. You do not need a guarantee. You do not need the fear to leave before you move. You just need to decide that you are the one who was built to walk through. Hold that feeling. That is the decision, finding its way into your body. That is what it feels like when clarity meets courage. Now let me tell you who you are on the other side of that door. You are a pioneer. Not because anyone gave you that title, because every time you moved forward without a map, every time you chose a direction that no one around you had walked before you, you proved it. You do not follow paths, you create them, and the people who come after you will walk on ground that you opened with nothing but faith and forward motion. You are a cycle breaker. There are patterns that existed in your lineage, your history, your family, patterns of limitation and smallness, of generation after generation, circling the same territory without being able to name why. Those patterns end with you, not because you declared war on your past, because you became someone who could no longer fit inside the container those patterns required. What cannot follow you forward will not. That is not cruelty, that is your calling, and you are a deliverer. You were not handed the weight of this journey just so you could survive it. You are handed it so that one day, when someone else arrives at this same threshold, shaking, not sure they can cross, you will be able to look at them from the other side and say, I know, I was there, and I crossed, and so can you. You are commissioned, you are sent. Let me tell you about someone. I am not going to give you a name, because this person's story is a pattern more than a biography, and I think you are going to recognize it. About a year ago, this person was standing exactly where you are right now. The calling was clear, but the circumstances were heavy. The finances were uncertain. The relationships around them were beginning to shift in ways that felt like loss before they could be understood as growth. And in the middle of all of that, they made a quiet decision. Not a public announcement, not a launch. A private, internal decision made alone, at night, with no audience, that the person they were becoming was already real, and they were going to live from that identity now. Regardless of whether the circumstances had caught up yet, they stopped explaining themselves to people who were not in the room where the work was actually being done. They got quiet. Not passive, intentionally quiet. They protected what was being built, and within a single season, not years, the doors that had been closed began to open, not because luck arrived, because the frequency changed, because when the identity shifts, everything around it has to reorganize. He proved himself in the quiet before the world saw him in public. That is what you are doing right now. Now, before I let you go, I want to close this in, the way this moment deserves. If what you heard today about gamma frequency and recalibrating to the state where clarity lives resonated with you, the information about the Genius song is in the pinned comment below. It is not available at this price anywhere else. 7 minutes, over 18,000 people, a full money-back guarantee. Look at the pinned comment when you feel ready, and only if you feel led. And if someone came to mind while you were watching this, someone you know who is standing at their own threshold right now and does not know it, this might be exactly what they need to hear. Send it to them. You will know exactly who I mean. You always do. Now, there are words being placed on my heart for everyone here, and I want to speak them directly. You came into this season carrying more than anyone around you could see. You carried it quietly. You carried it with more grace than you have given yourself credit for. And I know there were mornings, when you were not certain why you were still holding on. But you held, and the holding was not invisible. Not a single act of faithfulness in the hidden place was missed, not one. Every decision you made to keep believing when the evidence was thin was counted. It was building something, and that something is now ready. The season of only holding is ending. What is ahead of you is not a reward for surviving. It is the purpose you were always moving toward. The life that is waiting for you was not assembled recently. It was prepared before you needed it, before the wilderness began, before the pit. It was always going to be yours. You were always the one. All that remains is the decision. May you walk through the door that was built for you. May the relationships that belong to your next season begin finding you faster than you expect. May the clarity you have been reaching for settle into you now, not as a feeling that visits and leaves, but as a knowing that stays and deepens. The recalculating is done, the route is clear, and the destination, the one that has always had your name on it, is right on the other side of one decision. You are chosen. You have always been chosen. Now go and live like it.